All right, so this week we're going to start looking at oral communicators. But the first thing we're going to look at is this. This is what Titus put out in 2006, and so that's what I sent to you. The Bible storing that we're going to look at afterwards is from another organization that, and there's actually many of them, but I'll talk about it later. So let's look at this. And actually, you also have another one, a UNESCO, and it's International Literacy Day 2021. So that's a little update on what they talk about here in this part. So there's a definition on page 8 of your PDF. Would you like to read it?
Page what?
8.
Mm-hmm. Whole thing?
Literacy. Yeah, what is literacy?
The UN defines literacy as the inability to read and write a simple sentence in a language age 15 and above.
Okay, so that's your basic understanding of what illiteracy is. These statistics that are given here were done in 2006. So I did give you a handout on kind of updated UNESCO, what UNESCO's updated is, and it is better than this. The statistics of approximately 6 billion people on Earth, roughly 1.5 billion are illiterate. So I don't actually know. What is the population now?
7.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a lot more.
Over 8 now.
Oh, really? Gosh.
2006.
Yeah, 2006 is a long time ago, and it's like, so.
Well, almost. 2020, 7.75.
7.75, okay. Which is close to 8. So that was this. So at that time, in 2006, it was nearly 16 to 25% of the population were illiterate. So, and it said 2/3 of illiterates are women, 1/3 of men, 98 of illiterates live in developing countries, which is still current. 50% of illiterates live in India and China, though actually now they say it's Southeast Asia. The continent of Africa is less than 60% illiterate, which I think it's changed. 43% of all illiterates speak lesser known indigenous languages. 57% of illiterates speak major languages. Anyway, Islamic women were usually less literate, and the world's least reached and unevangelized people were mostly oral communicators. So they estimated the number of non-illiterates increases by 30 to 50 million people each year because of population growth, although worldwide literacy is increasing. So let's look at this. Now, this is also in there, and it's kind of a, we'll go back to the others, but it's kind of no, it's the other. You'll have to go back into the...
Yeah, there are 2 PDFs.
Yeah.
This is the other PDF.
This is PDF, another PDF.
It's got the UNESCO logo on top, and then it's got a red and a purple.
Right, exactly. And we're not going to read through the whole thing, but I'm highlighting some things because this is current, and so I thought it would be interesting. So, state of literacy, a snapshot before COVID-19, because it changed actually. The first bullet point is the global adult literacy rate, ages 15 and older, was 86% in 2019, which has remained almost unchanged since 2015. So actually, I think that is, what is that compared to the other thing that we just looked at? Doesn't really, it's not the...
The
Yeah.
on-
Yeah, it's actually worse. And then the global youth literacy rate was 92% in 2019, which is really high, equivalent to 100 million youth lacking basic literary skills. Youth literacy rates are generally higher than adults, reflecting increased access to schooling for younger generations. Next bullet point, mirroring patterns of social economic inequalities, population growth and development, literacy programs have been uneven across different regions, countries, and populations. Nearly 1/2 of the world's non-literate adults reside in South and West Asia, so that changed a little bit, while 27% are in sub-Saharan Africa, so but similar areas. So down, not the next one, but the following one, gender gaps persist. So again, women tend to be more illiterate than men. 54% in low-income countries, and in fragile and conflict-affected countries, 56%. Gender gaps in younger generations have shrunk in all regions over the past 26 years, except for Central Asia and Europe and North America, in which gender gaps in youth literacy has not been a serious matter. Final bullet point at the bottom, the literacy rate is expected to improve steadily to reach 94% by 2030. So it's supposed to go up. Look at the third page. This is talking about COVID. So I'm just going to look at 4 different bullet points here, and then you can read the rest on your own. But the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has had a serious negative impact, of course, on quality of education in general and developing literacy skills specifically. At the beginning of the pandemic, schools were closed in more than 190 countries. That's ridiculous, affecting the education of 90% of the world's student population of 1.57 billion. Second bullet point, an average child had lost 54% of a year's contact time by November 2020. That is outrageous. This can be equal to over a year of learning lost when we consider the loss of previous knowledge. Go down, skip the next bullet point and go to the next one. Responses to the COVID-19 school closures included remote learning solutions ranging from distributing paper-based take-home materials to provide lessons through broadcast media such as TV and radio and digital platforms. So if they had a TV or a radio was the most widely used media among low-income countries, 92%, while being used much less in high-income countries because they obviously have computers. The next bullet point, 826 million students, 50%, kept out of classrooms by the pandemic do not have access to the computer at home. So that's kind of what I was trying to say. Basically, the pandemic is actually adversely working toward literacy in the world. So it's something to be aware of. One thing, too, I think, let's see, I'm going to maybe say that later. Okay, let's go to this next slide. So that's what we were looking at, global research. So the next few slides are from the Global Research Department, and these were created in like 1999, 2001. So I'm just taking a snippet of what it was, what they were basically looking at literacy, or what an illiterate person, how an illiterate person looks at something and how a literate person looks at something. And I thought it was interesting. So name these things. Shapes. Don't think of being an oral communicator. What are they? Circle, square, triangle. Okay. So those with even a small amount of education, name them as a circle, square, or triangle. All learned conceptual ideas. We all remembered learning, this is a circle, this is a square, this is a triangle. Okay. Illiterates name geometric patterns by what they resemble. So a plate, a box, or a piece of pie. Okay? So those with even a small amount of education name them as circle, square, All right, which does not belong?
Orange or, yeah.
Okay, it's a fruit. What do you think, Tim?
Looking at it another way.
Yeah. I mean,
The knife sort of sticks out here.
right, circle. Yeah. As opposed to the circle, the round, circular.
Color, and then there's,
Yeah, the colored one.
Yeah, except that this one would be colored, but it's not. And this would probably all be colored, but anyway. Okay, let's look what it says. Some illiterates who associated with illiterates were aware that others think differently. One replied, a wise man, so this is what people have said, a wise man will say the cup doesn't belong. Do you see why? The orange goes on here, and this helps peel the orange. But the cup has.
But if you squeeze the orange, you can.
Yes, true, but
So-
that's what this illiterate said. That's what the, yes, exactly. Okay. When asked what a foolish man would say, he replied, a foolish man would say the orange doesn't belong. Because these are all like things that we used to eat with. And this is what we eat. So, it's just hilarious. Okay, you have 10 seconds to read the following list. Tell me which 3 pictures you need to visit and what you need to buy from each place. 3 places you need to visit. Okay, you have 10 seconds to read the following list. Tell me which 3 places you need to visit and what you need to buy from each place. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
I only found one place.
Huh?
I only found one place.
What?
A restaurant.
Okay. All right.
It was a hamburger.
Yeah,
Okay.
I saw the store to get toilet paper
Uh-huh.
and Pepsi.
Uh-huh.
There was one more, but I don't. I was figuring it out, but I'm lost it.
Right. Okay, so this is actually how an illiterate person looks at words. They don't get it. Like, it doesn't make any sense to them. We, on the other hand, put them in categories. And so the supermarket, eggs, bread, hamburger, hardware, sandpaper, paintbrush, half-inch screws, Fabricland, 10 yards of cording, and crochet hook pins. In Table 1, you saw a list as an illiterate sees our list. Nothing but a bunch of incomprehensible symbols. So just kind of give you the idea of what it's like for them. The fact is, in a world of illiterates, we are the learning disabled because they do something completely different. Okay. All right, going back to this. We're going to go back to this. Any questions on that so far, or comments, or reflections, or have any of you worked with illiterates?
Some degree, a little bit, but I've never put kids.
Yeah, kids. Yeah. Kids are probably the most illiterate that I've worked with.
I mean, yes, but not as a
Teacher.
in that
Yeah.
sphere.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's look at, because there's actually levels of literacy, and that's what we're going to look at on page 9 of your PDF. So it's kind of basically divided into oral communicators and literate communicators. All right, down at the bottom you can see this. Primary literates are, this has changed, so I'm just going to go, they cannot read or write. Some have never seen a word. To them, it's just a part of a picture. They do not study or analyze. Learning and communication preference is the story. So storying, or giving a story, is how they keep information and remember information, or give information and keep it. All right. Then there's the functional illiterate, which has begun to read and write, may have completed up to 8th grade in schools, but has not continued learning or using reading or writing skills. May read at a simple level, but do not normally use literate means to learn. Remember or recall information. In most countries, this level is considered literate. So, and preferred learning preference is narratives or stories. Actually, I have somebody in our campus that is a functioning illiterate, but he's super open about it. I wasn't good at school, don't give me, and when he writes, it's like really labored, and he's like 20 years old, okay? But he grew up kind of missionary and was homeschooled, but didn't, obviously, homeschooling didn't work for him. All right, now we move into the literate side. There's the semi-literate. They usually have passed 10 grades of school. They function somewhere between oral communication and functional literacy. Their learning and communication preference depends on the quality of schooling and how much they have continued to use literacy in daily life after schooling. They can learn well through both literate and oral styles. However, they tend to learn best and most comfortably through oral communication. So they do both, though not super high on the literate and not totally oral. So then we have the functional literate. Those who continue to use their literacy skills after grades 10 of school. A literate learner comfortably learns concepts, ideas, and principles through literature or literate styles, has lost some oral communication skills, and their memory is more dependent on written notes and information in books instead of oral recollection, like I'm doing right now. I'm laughing because I'm like, yeah, and I'm here sitting here reading this to you. No longer categorized as an oral communicator, but can still learn, enjoy, and respond to oral communication. And then there's the highly literate that has an advanced level of reading and writing, which they continually use and develop, i.e. college students and professionals. So, tell me, what is the highest oral communicator? What do they call it? You can look at your notes. Primary illiterates, highest literate.
Highly literate.
Highly literate. Okay, so then there's the three in the middle, the functional illiterate, the functional literate, and the semi-literate. Okay, so those are in the middle. On the next page, so the second, it's not the first line, but the second line, kind of second paragraph, oral communication is natural for humans. You learn to be literate. We need to remember that. We actually start learning as an oral communicator. As a baby, they're listening to their mother and their father, and if they have siblings. And it's like they begin to mimic those things, and they work through all those things. And then when they're getting into, their parents could start, but it's like preschool, they're learning letters, and they're beginning to associate letters, which is a literate thing, to sounds that they've been hearing, and that begins to bring those, it's very abstract, actually, thinking into that. So, yeah, we all start as oral communicators. You learn to be literate. Before you learned to read, you were primarily an oral communicator, but because of education, you are now literate or even highly literate. Before the Reformation and the printing press, even Christianity was mostly passed on through oral means. And actually, I think it was done almost all orally. That's why there became a problem in the church when they would only hear the word of God through the priest. And so the priest had a little bit of power, and if he wasn't upright and righteous, that was a problem, which we had problems with in the church. And that's why when the printing press came out, it was so like such a mind paradigm shift for the world that we could read it in our own language. And that suddenly, I think the holiness, because the priest knew it, was just such a big change. So atrophy. As a person learns to function through literacy, they begin to function less in an oral style. However, this new learning preference can also reverse when a person stops using literacy in their daily life. This can happen in many countries, especially where students stop going to school and begin working as laborers, shop owners, taxi drivers, or other skilled workers. The lack of using literacy will cause them to revert back to oral communication as the primary learning characteristic with which they gather information, teach, and share ideas. I don't know if you've noticed, but also older people end up saying more stories, sharing more stories about their life. Have you noticed that? Like the older they get, even Lauren, he's like a storyteller now, and it's like he's always been a storyteller, but I don't remember that at the very beginning when I first started. I feel like he's become even more of a storyteller, and he's trying to get just truths across by those stories. So anyway, so it's based on our usage, our literacy, which is kind of interesting. I think that we're affected, this is what I was thinking about, but I think we're affected as well by our usage on the phone, our phones. And there's been some study and dialogue that people may be actually getting more oral communicators because of what's going on with social media and so on, and because of the pictures and the stories and so on. They're telling visual stories instead of written stories or verbal even. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So I think having this tool of Bible storytelling in our belt and understanding that is actually really helpful for the people that are coming into YWAM and the people that we go overseas to and within our communities to reach. So I think it's actually more relevant than we realize, because it sounds like, oh good, we're going to go tell a Bible story, but actually it's probably really helpful. So